was kind of a weird day. Kara kept strangely quiet about what had happened that morning. Probably because there wasn't much of a way for her to come out of it looking pristine either. She was only confident with her rumors when the incident at hand didn't involve her. I was relieved to not have to deal with that, though. There was something else that was a little strange, though. Oh, do tell. It started as a prickle at the back of my neck. Just a weird feeling of being, watched. I might have dismissed it as paranoia if I hadn't been catching sight of the same two people lurking around during passing periods or lunch. If it's Brenna and Drayson, I swear. Two people I didn't really usually see around as often. I freaking called it. Drayson and Brenna. At first I thought I was imagining it, but Drayson was kind of, super obvious about trying to duck out of sight if he saw me looking his way. Brenna was much more nonchalant about it, but it was kind of obvious they were following me around. By lunch, I was ready to throttle them both until they told me what on earth they were doing. I hadn't managed to actually catch either of them, though. They were annoyingly good at vanishing when I tried to approach them. Damn fairies. But I definitely wanted to ask them why they were following me around because, it was a little annoying. Not to mention weird. Brenna or Drayson? Well, I know that my previous choice of asking about Brenna was a good one, so I assume continue on the Brenna train. Plus, if I talk to Drayson, he's just gonna give me that innocent unicorn smile and be like, Ewan's worried about you. Whereas Brenna's got, like, the deets. Them deep deets. Let's go talk to Brenna. If we can catch her. Brenna was the one I decided to talk to, though. Fortunately, my afternoon courses were light. I had a study hall and a free period. I figured if I spent the free period wandering around, Brenna would turn up. Because I was pretty sure she never actually went to class. And sure enough, as soon as I stopped by my locker, I heard her quiet footfalls behind me. I whirled around in time to see her duck down a side hall. Uh-huh. I shut my locker and took off toward the stairs at a not-quite jog. I bolted quickly up the first flight and ducked into the first hall I found, hoping she'd follow me. I tried to quiet my breathing as I waited because I was certain she had some kind of stupid fairy sixth sense working against me. But to my delight, I only waited a few minutes before I heard her soft footsteps and she suddenly popped around the corner. Throw your coat over her quick and drag her into the woods. Her eyes went wide for a split second before she managed to compose her face into a scowl. So, hello! Look, I'm not going to dance around this. I just want to know why you're following me. You're pretty full of yourself if you think I have nothing better to do than follow you. Oh, I'm not denying you could probably come up with a ton of better things to do. However, what you are doing is following me. I want to know why. And let's not waste time by denying it. I know you're following me. I'm not stupid. That's debatable. I notice you're not really denying that you're following me. I was waiting to see if you'd do anything interesting after what happened this morning. How did she even know about that? I knew Kara hadn't spread it around. So Drayson? He was the only other one there for the whole thing. Though EWAN could have mentioned it as well. See me doing something interesting. What does that even mean? Brenna simply shrugged and, to my unending confusion, wandered off. Well, I wasn't really expecting to get any answers from Brenna, but maybe I impressed her with my ninja skills. I stood there, staring after her as she disappeared back down the stairs. What was with them? All of them. Because I was Fae, they were going to keep an eye on me or something? I wasn't happy with that idea at all. That said, confronting her seemed to do the trick. I didn't catch sight of either of them for the rest of the day. Though there wasn't that much left in the day anyway. But even after the bell rang, I didn't see either of them lurking around, so that was good at least. My phone chimed as I was about to start upstairs, and I quickly dug it out of my pocket. Hey, come down to parking lot. I'm with Shelly.
We're ready to head to your house.
On my way. I shoved it back in my book bag and quickly headed down. We're gonna have Shelly over at our house? How delightful. It looked like we'd be spending club time at my house working on the sleepwalking thing. After a quick round of introductions downstairs, we all hopped in Allie's car and headed to my house. We probably have an hour or two before Mom gets home.
We shouldn't need that long. I probably didn't even need to come, but Allie thought it would be helpful.
I quickly unlocked the front door and pushed it open. I'm only now noticing your fingerless mesh gloves. I love them.
How's the brownie situation, by the way?
Awesome. Saved me from some death fairies last night. Would recommend giving a brownie some milk. Oh, I think it's better? I left some snacks out for it, and it seems to have calmed down.
You have a brownie! How sweet!
Yeah, well, you'd think that. But Spencer managed to piss it off, and it was pranking him like crazy for a while.
Oh dear! How did that happen?
I'm not totally sure, but I think it may have to do with the fact that he kicked some mushrooms over in the fairy ring out back. That's the only thing I can think of anyway. Shelly shot Allie a quick look.
You have a fairy ring here.
I looked from one to the other curiously. It's true, we've never really mentioned that to most people. Yes? Is that an issue? We had one at our last house too, and it was no big deal. Allie, you remember it, right? We used to play in it all the time.
I'd forgotten about it, but now that you mention it...
Can you show it to me?
Sure. Surprised by this turn of events, I led them through the house and out to the backyard. I stopped just outside the ring and pointed to the shriveled remnants of broken mushroom caps. That's where Spencer kicked it, but you can see it's already grown new ones. Shelly was frowning down at it pretty hard. Ewan didn't seem to think much of it though, so I wasn't sure why Shelly was so bothered by it. I mean, to be fair, Ewan... he knows more than we do, but not as much as Brenna because he's not a fan of fairies. So he may not know the significance of this, but I'm interested that Shelly is so perturbed.
I don't like this. Do you feel that, Allie?
Feel what?
It definitely gives off a weird feeling.
I don't feel anything, though.
Maybe because you're Fae.
Well, fairy rings are supposed to be dangerous for humans. Maybe that's why it feels strange to you guys? Witches still count as mortals, right? Right, journal? What do you have to say about this? Spriggans and things, changelings, Glastig. There we go. Fairy rings are a really common phenomenon. It's basically a circle of mushrooms, usually, but it can just be a ring of very dark green grass, used as a fairy haunt. Not all fairy rings are supernatural, but those that are tend to be pretty dangerous for humans. Not only do fairies get pretty ticked if you intrude on them or spy on them, but fairy rings have strange powers. They let you glimpse fairy, or even enter it, among other things. We knew that thanks to, I think it was one of Corvin's bad endings? Pretty sure Rule took Spencer back to fairy through that thing. I mean, I had no idea. I was still new to all this.
We do.
Nora, listen. Sometimes fairy rings are just mushrooms. Normal mushrooms growing in a weird pattern. But sometimes they can form a gate to the fairy world. That's why they can be dangerous. And considering your parents are human, and possibly Spencer, yeah, this one could be a problem.
If the brownie got that angry at your brother for just kicking a few mushrooms over, it's clear this one has some connection to fairies. And with that weird aura it's giving off...
Gates to the fairy world aside, imagine what would happen if your dad tries to get rid of it or something. Or if he mows over it.
Ugh, the brownie would completely freak out. I hadn't even thought about that. What do we do?
There are ways to get rid of it without rousing the Fae, but it'll be tricky. It's not really my area of expertise.
Nor mine.
I think it'll take some time to put together. We'll have to do some research.
Do you think the reason I'm sleepwalking has to do with this thing?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, it could.
If that was the case, getting rid of it was definitely a good idea. Unfortunately not. You've been sleepwalking in the city all these years.
It may take some time to figure out the exact source of that, but in the meantime, we have a short-term solution.
Yes, please. It's definitely not getting any better.
Hopefully not getting worse.
That's a matter of debate.
What happened?
I don't really remember much of it all. It's never all that clear in the mornings.
What do you remember?
Just feelings? The feeling of being suffocated, of wanting to get out. Sometimes a memory of voices, music. It's all very vague. There's this feeling like my body is moving against my will, like someone else is controlling it. It's really disconcerting.
We put something together to keep you inside at night, but it isn't a fix. I think it would be wise to continue to look into this to see if you can find the root cause.
I agree. In the meantime, let's go to your room. We'll show you what we brought.
Up in my room, I flopped on the bed while Allie and Shelley had a look around. Shelley poked her head into the bathroom.
I assume you usually just head out through the main door.
Yeah. I've tried setting up little barriers. Things to trip myself up. Piles of shoes or whatever I can do without someone noticing. Sleepwalking me is a little too smart to fall for those kinds of tricks. Or things. Did I say things? It's things. Tricks are for kids! And she's apparently too smart to try to escape through Spencer's room, too. He's a pretty light sleeper, so that definitely wouldn't go over well.
Well, for now, I think my original plan will work.
And what plan is that? She fished 2 little jars out of her bag and set them on my desk. What are those?
Do you know what a fairy bane is?
Yeah, I've read about the fairy plants. Banes are plants fairies don't like. Alright, Janelle? Let's see. Fairy banes are plants and other items that are considered harmful, or at least hateful, to fairies. Fairy banes can be used as protective charms to keep them away. Among the most well-known fairy banes are St. John's wort, daisy chains, a symbol of the sun, iron, bells, salt, and red thread or ribbons. It's unclear exactly what it is about some of these items that fairies dislike, and since lore can be a bit vague, it's also difficult to know how effective some of them actually are.
More than that, some banes can actually be harmful or act as protection to keep them out.
My idea was to try to use that concept to keep you in.
She picked up one jar and held it out to me. I reached for it, but hissed and drew my hand back the moment my fingers touched the glass. What is that?
Burns?
A little. I mean, it didn't hurt that much, just surprised me.
It's a mixture of St. John's wort and some other fairy banes. I thought you could try sprinkling it in your door. It'll create a low-level barrier that should either keep you in, or at least wake you up if you try to cross it. To be safe, I'd put some on the window ledge too. We don't know how determined your sleeping self is, but it would definitely not be good if you tried to go out the window.
Yeah. I can't see that ending well for me unless Sleeping Me also has superpowers.
The other jar, the one with the ribbon, that one is a dispelling mixture.
You are eventually going to need to get out of your room.
Yeah. Can't imagine having to explain to Mom why I can't leave my room in the morning.
If you put it down over the barrier, it should counteract the effects and let you leave. I'm also making some water-based infusions for you, since I think it'll be easier to spritz that in the doorway rather than sprinkling plants. but it's not ready yet. In the meantime, you might want to stick with using gloves when you put down the barrier.
Yeah, probably a good plan.
And look, a final word of warning here. You might want to keep an eye out for things that might be encouraging fairy activity here.
Things?
It's not unusual for houses here in Pine Hollow to have brownies or other tutelary spirits, but in your case, to have the brownie inside and the fairy ring outside.
Have you seen any other fairies around?
Well, there have been a few. I mean, aside from that Spriggan, I've seen a few other ones lurking around the yard. Most look pretty harmless, small, skittish, mushroomy. I think I've dreamed about them being in the house, though. I mean, I'm not really sure whether it was a dream or not, to be honest. I forgot about those mushroom fairies. I thought it was weird that they had a sprite for showing up, like, 3 seconds in one route. Now I'm really sus.
I'm just worried because it's looking like you have some deep connections to fairy that predate you finding out about your own heritage. And then, coincidentally, your parents happened to pick a house with a fae occupant, fairies around outside, and other fairy activity. And then you started sleepwalking right away. It may not be coincidence. There may be other fairy magics at work.
So what exactly do I keep an eye out for?
Anything that looks out of place. Plants that shouldn't be where they are. Cut flowers that stay fresh for basically ever.
Yesterday, when I went to the basement to put out some milk for the brownie, I did find something. I just didn't think much of it. I thought the brownie may have put it there, so I left it alone.
Can you show us?
I nodded and led them back downstairs. It didn't take long to run down and get the little bunch of flowers I'd found, and several others I hadn't noticed the first time around. Oh, that's interesting. In the end, we had 5 bunches set out on the kitchen table. What did 5 mean? Was it 3, 5, and 7? Was that the numbers? I can't remember now. They all looked pretty fresh, and all were tied together with some sort of twine.
Primroses in time.
Primroses in time. Let's see. Just as fairies hate some plants, they love others. Fairy plants like thyme and primroses have magic properties like giving one the ability to see fairies. But because they are also known to be fairy plants, just having them around can invite fairies to lurk about or even enter your house. Was it primroses that was in the magic vial that can scare the changeling away? I think it was.
I think these are definitely fairy favors.
They might have been gathered up by the brownie, but we should definitely get rid of them. Having them in the house can encourage other fairies to waltz right in.
Ugh.
Did you see anything else odd down there?
Well, no. To be fair, I don't entirely know what I might be looking for, besides weird bunches of herbs. But there was nothing else that didn't look like it belonged.
Well, I'm glad we checked. I'm glad I came over.
I'm glad you guys know more about fairies than I do. I was seriously glad about that. I wish you guys had gone down to the basement so that you would see if there's anything strange. But other than that, glad about it, because it had never occurred to me that a little bouquet of flowers might have some kind of ominous effect on the house.
I did some research the past few days.
I've been doing research for the last week.
Well, I guess I do have enough experience to know what to look up.
Listen, just keep an eye out for more of these things showing up. And if they do, toss them. Outside, not in the bin.
Thank you guys so much.
Anytime.
And now I need to head out.
Already? You guys could stay for dinner if you want.
I'd like to, but
Alas, there's no magic spell for homework.
Then what's even the point of being a witch?
Right?
We laughed and I showed them to the door. At least if Mom turned up now, I could shrug it all off as a study group and not a group of evil, conniving magical friends imbuing the house with fairy banes. I watched as Allie and Shelley piled back into the car and I waved them off. I was just hugging my arms against the cold and was about to step inside when I heard the familiar growl of a motorbike. I ducked behind the eaves of the entranceway, watching as Ewan pulled up in Elliot's driveway. Weird, since there was no one home. Seemingly materializing from nowhere, a black cat showed up, walking along the top of the fence. I raised an eyebrow as Ewan picked it up and cradled it against his chest. It looked like he was talking to it. Is he stopping by to talk to Elliot's cat? Because that was weird, even by fairy standards. It's the same cat that saved you, girl. I shook my head and just went inside. I had other things to worry about. The cat's important, I swear. I ran my hands through my hair with a long sigh. Excuse me. With that done, I had homework of my own. It was a little weird stepping back into the real world from an afternoon of potions and fairy magic. The paranormal didn't seem to just easily blend into real life to the point it became part of every day. Instead, it stood inside its own little realm where I usually was pulled against my will, and I had to move back and forth between that and normal life. It made it harder to get used to it all when it only seemed to rear its head sometimes. But with luck, Allie and Shelley's visit today meant I'd have to deal with the more annoying aspects of the paranormal far less for now. That was definitely something to look forward to. Indeed. Okay, well, we let Ewan be Ewan with Brenna. Chapter 4, Setting the Stage. My breath frosted on the chilly morning air as I stood by the bridge. I should have felt 1,000 times better for sleeping so soundly. I didn't know if I hadn't sleepwalked at all, or if I had just given up after not being able to escape. I had nearly bounced down to the kitchen, but that's where my bubbly mood had ended. Let me guess, Spencer. Spencer had been seated at the table with his head in his hands, the picture of dejection. He looked up when I entered, and I'd been pretty shocked by what I saw. He was pale, with dark rings under his eyes. Basically, he looked the way I'd felt the past few days. But worst of all was the bitter, furious look he leveled my direction. It was so full of hate I'd almost taken a step back. For a long moment, we just looked at each other, then he wordlessly sprang to his feet, grabbed his bag, and as he stormed out, there was nothing I could do or say. I didn't even know what was bothering him so much, because he refuses to communicate like a normal human. The brownie wasn't an issue anymore. So why did he look like that? What else was going on? It wasn't like he was going to talk to me about it, though. I guess that's why I just grabbed my stuff and left as well. Staying in the house was just too suffocating, so I just started walking back to the dangerous bridge. And somehow I'd ended up down by the bridge again, just staring down the stream to where it disappeared in the trees. At least it was peaceful down here. But somehow, instead of giving me any sort of comfort, it was just making me more depressed. Ah! I pulled my hands through my hair and down the sides of my face. More than ever, I just wanted it all to stop. I just wanted things to go back to normal. No witches, no magic, no fairies. I wanted to go back in time and fix all of this before it ever started. That's what I really wanted, because all the answers in the world wouldn't undo what had been done. The problem was, of course, that turning back the clock was impossible. I could only move forward, though sometimes I felt like I was just being swept along against my will. And the faster I was swept along, the further I was being swept from Spencer. I don't know how to fix this anymore. Though to be honest, I never did. I looked up and froze when I caught a pair of yellow eyes staring at me. It was that black cat again, sitting on the railing to the bridge, watching me. "What do you want?" weird cat? So weird that Ewan would literally stop by Elliot's house when no one was there to talk to it? I narrowed my eyes. Why would Ewan do that unless it wasn't a normal cat? Fairy cat? Cat fairy? I mean, that was a thing. If that's the case, then I'm sick of you too. Though I probably shouldn't say that since it had helped me. The cat, to its credit, just stared back at me, unblinking. It didn't move an inch, not even its tail. For a second, I could almost fool myself that it was a statue. If that thing was some sort of fairy animal, that would mean another fairy was following me around. Then again, considered it might be a familiar or something related to Allie, I hadn't remembered to ask her about it, so I probably shouldn't jump to conclusions. Uh-oh, mysterious whispering. What was that? Was that singing? A sudden wave of dizziness washed over me and all other sounds muted. Oh no. My eyelids drooped as a feeling of sleepiness came over me, and I felt myself moving toward the embankment, my feet moving of their own accord. The cat hissed loudly and hopped off the railing into the middle of the street. I was vaguely aware of it. Not safe. It wasn't safe for it to be there. Not in the street. I should make it move. But I couldn't shake the sudden need to get under the bridge. There was something there for me. Something... I had to find it. I struggled to stop myself from going under there again. We're not going under the bridge. Are you crazy? That's another bad ending right there. I finally shook off the strange trance, for lack of a better word. Color and sound bled back into the world as I forced my feet to move sluggishly back to the center of the bridge. My shaking hand reached out and gently touched the cat's head. You should get out of the street, kitty. I still didn't even know its name. It didn't look too thrilled about me petting it, but it didn't attack, so that was good. Thank you. I scooped it up and set it back on the rail, deciding it was time to leave. I should head back to the house and see if I could beat Allie there. She'd probably be showing up any minute now. I glanced back at the cat. Thanks for stopping me. Though I didn't know why it would be a problem to go under that bridge, I couldn't help but feel there was something not right about that place. Yeah. That strange, overwhelming sleepiness. It was too much like the sleepwalking. And, I don't know, the way I was just drawn down there so much in the first place. I should just stay away from now on. I'm glad it only took like 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, I didn't make it quite all the way back before Allie pulled up to the drive. I picked up the pace, jogging toward the car. She hopped out as I got there, and the look on her face wasn't encouraging.
And where have you been? I thought I told you not to wander around. Please don't tell me you're coming back from that stupid bridge.
I looked away awkwardly.
Why do you keep going down there? You know it's not safe.
The Spriggan isn't even there anymore. The words fell flat. I mean, given what just happened, the Spriggan was the least of my worries.
The Spriggan isn't the only thing lurking around this time of year. And bridges aren't a good place to hang out right now.
I perked up at that. Oh? Why not? She raised an eyebrow at my sudden willingness to hear her out. What? I'm curious. Liminal, that's the word.
Because bridges are liminal spaces. Places where the barrier around our world sort of thins out. Especially this time of year.
Yay! Let's read about Liminal again. Lemon, 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 lemons, 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 lemons. There we go. Liminal spaces are a paranormal phenomenon that cause the thin veil between reality and, well, not reality to become even thinner. They are places where the supernatural can easily bleed into the real world and vice versa. In a practical sense, a liminal space is just a place that doesn't exist for its own sake. They're areas of transition where other things pass through. Liminal spaces can include places like cemeteries, bridges, empty or abandoned places, even something as innocuous as a park bench. Very dangerous, those benches. I'd read about liminal spaces before, but I didn't think they were a real paranormal thing.
It's just not safe. That's the point.
I'm sorry. Spencer was cranky again, and you know how I am. When I'm upset, I go for walks.
I get it, but it's not a good time of year for calming walks.
I bit back a frustrated sigh. I'd come back here for a fresh start in a place I loved, but things were worse than ever. It's never been a problem before, you know. Samhain isn't a new thing. Happens every year, and I've never had issues before. I don't get why it's so different just because I know about all this stuff now. Allie sighed and motioned for me to get in the car. We hopped in, and she carefully backed out of the driveway and headed out of the neighborhood.
Because a lot of things ignore you if they don't think you're aware of them. A lot of things aren't even aware of you until you're aware of them. The more you get drawn into this world, the more dangerous it becomes. Why do you think we keep normal people out? Because they can't defend themselves from the things that will go after them the moment it's apparent a human is aware of all this.
Great.
For instance, other fairies are going to be way more interested in you now than they were before you could actively take notice of them. Hence our concern about those fairy favors in your house. And that fairy ring.
I wonder if Spencer has, crossed over into the knowing part and is now being haunted, in a sense, from some upsetty fairies. So it wasn't just about my family?
Well, I didn't want to scare you, and neither did Shelley. But no, it wasn't.
Should I be afraid more of them are going to try to drag me off into the woods? Then again, given my current situation, I might just go into some weird fugue state and wander off with them willingly.
Hey, it wouldn't be the first time. From what I understand, Ewan had the same problem.
Really?
I don't have all the details. It's just bits and pieces I've heard around the agency. But yeah, why do you think he hates fairies so much?
I don't know. I assumed it was some sort of projected anger due to the
head thing?
Yeah.
Well, at least part of the problem is the fact that they stalked him for a while and tried to drag him off several times.
Great. Do you think that's what my sleepwalking is? Some sort of concentrated effort to drag me off to Faerie? Because, rude?
Well, it could be. Some Fae are pretty good at influencing dreams. And I have read a few things that imply fairies might be able to control sleeping humans. And fairies are pretty notorious for wanting to inject new blood into their race. People like you and Ewan are probably prime targets. Human heritage, life force that hasn't been drained out and weakened by Faerie.
Well, looks like me and Ewan gotta work on making babies together. Yeah, let's do it. Oh, great. So now they want me as breeding stock. Isn't that charming?
Hey, all I'm saying is that it's possible they might take notice of you for something like that. So you should be careful. Not like they aren't known for whisking people away from the human world.
That was true enough. Fairy lore was rife with stories about that kind of thing.
And that's only one danger, by the way. There are plenty of other things. You know how busy I've been at the agency.
I know. Preparing for Samhain and all that.
That's right. There are lots of nasty things that wash into town this time of year when the magic currents overflow.
you've mentioned the current thingy before, I think.
Yes, I have. Because it's important. Magic overflow is literally what the whole fuss is about this time of year. Usually the currents are pretty steady, but during times like Samhain, the solstices, or other important times of year, the Earth produces way more magic energy than usual. The currents become much broader, stronger. Not only does it make it way easier for paranormal things to manifest, but there are lots of drifters that show up as well.
Ah, drifters and things like Alfred. Let's see. There we go. Drifters are strange cryptids that float around on magic currents sweeping over the planet. Some of them apparently live in the currents, feeding off the magic energy. Others get trapped in them and don't have the strength to leave because, in general, drifters are pretty weak. That isn't always the case, though. Pine Hollow has a unique geography that causes drifters to float in, fall out of the currents, and just sort of get stuck here. Especially during times of overflow. The agency goes through a lot of trouble to catalog, round up, and free the ones swept into the area every overflow. So that's what they're so busy doing. Those are the things that just float around in the currents, right?
Yes, but this time of year lots more than usual wash in. Oh, and by the way, because Pine Hollow is kind of a weird geographic location, there aren't a lot of outlets for the currents. So things tend to wash in and get stuck here for a while. It's not a super fun time of the year for any of us. We have a lot of work to do to keep everyone safe.
It's that dangerous?
It can be, yeah. I mean, there are stray gates popping up everywhere. Liminal spaces, like that bridge, can either turn into a gate to some other place, or just pop you randomly into a ghost road where you could get permanently stuck. Things that are usually quiet or sleeping start stirring, waking up. There are some pretty nasty things lurking down in the old mines, and we have to keep an eye on it all, not to mention the drifters. So I worry about you, especially when you're sleepwalking or taking your usual walks like everything is status quo. I know you're not used to having to exercise this type of caution, but it's really important right now. Just until after the holiday.
I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. I hated the idea I was causing Allie so much worry. I didn't really mean to. I mean, you've hated it so much that you haven't talked to her about important subjects, i.e., sleepwalking into the woods, many times for long times, because you didn't want her to worry. So smarten up, Nora. You only worry her when it's dumb. You're like, oh, I don't want to worry her. It would be smart to not talk about the important thing. Oh, I'm not going to listen to her and worry her for another important thing that I should be listening to. I let out a long sigh. I get it, okay? I get it. I'll be careful. I'm just not used to having to be afraid of bridges and shadows and everything. Yeah, I mean, I get it, too. You're like desperately trying to hold on to any nugget of normalcy you can get, and it's just slowly being taken from you piece by piece. So I understand Nora completely as well.
You don't have to be afraid of it all. Just be, you know.
Careful. I know. Until the holiday is over, I will lock myself in my room and make Mom slide sandwiches through the crack at the bottom.
I don't know that you need to go quite that far.
You know me. I don't do things halfway. She rolled her eyes.
Anyway, why was Spencer upset? Brownie still causing problems somehow?
I don't think so. I don't know. At this point, I think it's just that the damage is done. He doesn't need more pranks to hate me.
I'm sure he doesn't hate you.
Yeah. You didn't see the glare I got this morning.
I'm sure you guys can still work it out.
I'm losing faith, frankly.
Well, don't. He's your brother. Eventually you guys will be able to talk about all this.
Well, we'll see, I guess.